Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this Google Workspace for Education update webinar, the first of 6. My name is Ben. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm a Google certified trainer and innovator, and I'm also joined by Charlie. Hi Charlie.
Hi Ben, and welcome everybody. So I'm Charlie Love, and I am also a Google certified educator and administrator, and work with schools using Google Workspace.
Yeah, so Charlie's based up in Aberdeen. I am much further south, just outside of London. But hopefully we can already see that we've got a few people represented. So Ireland I can see represented, a couple from London. So please let us know vaguely who you are and where you're accessing from today. And we're going to take you through some of the Google Workspace for Education updates that have been rolling out since about February time. So obviously, it's been a turbulent year, but one part of that has been the move to distance learning in a lot of cases. We have seen that Google Workspace for Education has got a lot more use. In response to that, the team have made some changes to ensure that you get more choice control, flexibility, and obviously the things that you need to meet your organization's needs. So we're going to have a look at those changes. Some you might have seen already roll out into your Google Workspace accounts. You might also be looking at what's on the horizon. So we'll go through a number of those as you go through. Please keep your questions coming in the comments. And if you either have got a longer form question that won't fit in the comments, or you don't have access to comment in the comments, then there's also a Q&A document which will be appearing in the comments shortly as well. So lots of opportunities for you to ask questions as we go along. So as I said, it's been a changeable year. At this point in time, there are over 170 million students and educators worldwide using Google Workspace for Education. So if you are one of those over 170 million, then obviously you're in good company, but there's always room for improvement. And that's why we wanted to talk about some of the updates that are coming to make sure that you can sort of provide impactful teaching and learning wherever you are. Obviously, for everyone now that's back in school across the UK and Ireland, but we can see from around the world that times are changeable. Great to see lots of representation from across the country and the nations as well. So thank you to everyone that said hello so far. And then we'll look forward to you also adding some questions as we go along. Charlie, I haven't seen... Oh, we have had Grant from Scotland. I was going to say, almost thought you weren't represented fully, but we've got some representation there. That's great news. Yeah, just I think we just need someone to add if they're from Northern Ireland or the north of Ireland, because other than that, we're pretty much well represented. Awesome. So what we're going to first of all do is talk about Google Workspace and some new additions. Now, you may have seen around February time that G Suite became Google Workspace. Now, in addition to the simple name change, that has come with, and they're now available, some new Workspace additions. So let's have a look at what those are and try and just give you some overview of those different additions that exist. So there are 4 additions. First of all, let's talk about Google Workspace for Education Fundamentals. So if you were using the free G Suite for Education, then you will have switched automatically onto Google Workspace Education Fundamentals. That is that free suite of tools that you're used to that enables collaboration and learning opportunities on a secure platform. Just to make sure everyone's clear, before I get onto the paid editions, Google is very committed to continuing to add in new features and support the features that exist on Workspace for Education Fundamentals. So you'll see when we get through into some of the updates that there's lots of great updates coming for the free edition. Of course, in last year, Enterprise was introduced, and the Enterprise level was a kind of one-size-fits-all situation. And what's happened now is that in listening to educators, Google for Education has understood that there needs to be a bit more flexibility and choice. And that's where you'll see the paid editions of Education Standard, the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, and if you want both of those together and a little bit more, there's Education Plus. Yeah. Okay. So with those in mind, let's have a little dive into those. First of all, Education Fundamentals. As I said, that's the free suite of tools. So your Google Meet, Docs, Sheets, Slides, Sites and Jamboard, and Google Classroom. The communication tools as well, like Chat and Gmail. And if you're using an LMS, don't forget that there is all the functionality of Google Classroom available through Assignments, which will give you that within your own learning management system. And most importantly, that Education Fundamentals still maintains that security and compliance that you need as an organisation.
And it's worth mentioning, Ben, also that you still have access to Vault to do investigations and to look at that piece as well around compliance. So those powerful tools are still there in that free edition.
Absolutely. So really important to stress that. And actually, as we talk about security-related features, next we're going to talk about education standards. So Charlie, I'll pass over to you.
So really, Education Standard gives admins the ability to track and monitor and detect threats to your organization through Google Workspace. So you have enhanced tools around detecting, looking at security, looking at your security setup, how you're configured in terms of best practice. You have a security dashboard that you can look at for that. And you have the ability to your closer management of your devices with audits and enforcement of rules. And you have insights into Gmail logs, and you can take that data out and analyze that through the power of BigQuery. And of course, you also have the addition of being able to track your usage across your domain, looking at those audit logs and through Drive, Classroom, which is coming, and look across the domain. So it's a really powerful set of additional tools for that security and analytics to understand what's working in your domain and how things are going.
So obviously, Charlie, with Aberdeen City, where you kind of have, how many schools is it across the local authority?
It's about 60 schools, Ben.
So in those situations, I think that additional insight is where schools and organisations are looking to kind of really dive into the usage, and Education Standard provides an additional set of tools for that, as well as the security, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can really see very quickly what's happening in your domain and detect through the security dashboard the activity that's going on. So it's really useful, and we'll be talking about that in future webinars as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to go into more detail in a lot of things you'll see today into the additional 5 webinars that follow on from this one. So if it feels like we're skirting over things a little bit quickly, there's deeper dives coming up in the other webinars. So with the Enterprise for Education previously, those security features and the teaching and learning features all came bundled in together. So what Google for Education has done is separate out, if you want those security features, then you can upgrade to the Education Standard. And if you want the teaching and learning features, then there is a separate upgrade called the Teaching and Learning Upgrade. So as part of the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, that's where you'll be able to upgrade your video conferencing through Meet to have 250 participants all at once, whereas you get 100 participants for fundamentals. There's also the option to live stream to up to 10,000 viewers across your domain. So for sort of scaling the pedagogy you want to share across the organization, also the professional development opportunities of that all comes with the Teaching and Learning Upgrade. In Google Meet, features like Q&A, polls, attendance tracking and breakout rooms all come as part of the Teaching and Learning Upgrade. And coming soon, as well as being able to save and archive recordings from Google Meet, you'll also see transcribing of the captions from a Google Meet coming, which is a great addition. There's going to be some other features coming soon to Classroom, which is integrating your third-party tools. We'll talk a bit more about that in due course. And the final part of the Teaching and Learning Upgrade is the ability to have unlimited originality reports. And also the ability to set up a private repository of student work within your organisation to compare the work that students are producing. So that ability for the students to check their citations as they go and submit their best work is available in an unlimited way through the Teaching and Learning Upgrade. So of course, some of you may want the features of Education Standard and the features of Teaching and Learning Upgrade, and there's a few extras as well, and that's where Education Plus comes in.
So with Education Plus, what you're getting is, as Ben said, you get all those features of the Standard Edition, you get the Teaching and Learning upgrade, but you also get additional functionality as well. And part of that very much is focused around, you have live streaming, so that's in-domain, up to 100,000 in-domain viewers with Google Meet. There's a cloud search additional tool, which gives you the power of Google to look across your domain, look across your data stores and be able to find information, make information much more accessible and discoverable. And the opportunities to use student information systems, your student information systems, to sync to Google Classroom rosters and to provide that functionality, which really just will ease the administration of Google Classrooms. In addition to that, one feature that I'm really looking forward to is the streamline of document approvals directly within Drive, Gmail, and Docs and other Google Workspace editors, so that if you have an approval workflow in your organization where you have documents that you create that then have to go for approval and sign off before they get circulated more widely, those features will be built in into the Education Plus product. And they're really looking forward to those because they'll be able to support you, give you a really simple workflow for those approval processes that you might already use. And the fact that it's built in is a really great advantage. And there'll be in some enhanced response times from the support team of product specialists with the Education Plus product.
So yeah, so there's that option to have all of the things you've seen plus a few extras through Education Plus. As you may have seen on the screen, if you are interested in upgrading, then in the first instance, reach out to your existing partners and they'll be able to talk to you about your options for upgrading. If you're not working with a partner, then just make sure you fill out the feedback form along with everybody else. And if you identify that you're not working with a partner, we can go about putting you in touch with some of the partners to support you having a look at these additions. And through a partner, you can get an initial free trial just to sort of get a sense of how that looks and how those features work. Okay, so let's have a little dive into some of the updates. Across all of those editions, there's lots of really interesting updates, and we just want to have a look at those. I have noticed in the comments that we've got some representatives from Northern Ireland who may not be in Northern Ireland at the moment, so we're trying to find out if that counts. Keep your questions coming. We've had one question in the Q&A doc already. Please continue to add any questions as we go throughout. We're really keen to make sure that this all makes sense and you feel empowered to go and do what you need to do. So, as we look through the updates, let's start with Google Workspace for Education launches. So, there are some launches that we've already mentioned, like document approvals, and obviously the new additions. Charlie's going to talk later about target audiences and some automated group membership. We're going to dive into a few of these in detail, but I know many educators will be very excited to see draft responses in Google Forms and also revision history for Jamboard. And there's also the ability in Docs to search to cite. And then there's also some more additional autocorrect smart compose things coming to Docs and Gmail. So, as Charlie's already mentioned, through Education Plus, you can get document approvals. The feature is rolling out as we speak. So if you've got either the legacy Enterprise for Education or Education Plus, which you can get through your resellers, then you can start to go through that process, that streamlined built-in process of getting documents approved. I know a lot of people are quite looking forward to getting their teeth into that one. Charlie, target audiences, I mentioned briefly. Would you like to sort of share exactly what that will look like, both on a admin side of things and also from a teaching, sort of education point of view?
Sorry, folks.
No problem.
Hopefully you can hear me now. I had an audio issue with my computer there. So, yes, so in terms of target audiences, just to catch up on that, with target audiences, what you have is the ability that within your domain, you would typically have a share with anyone in the domain as an option. That would be an option in your domain. So you would have everybody in the domain, and you could share with those. But what you have now, what you'll have with target audiences, is to be able to specify up to 5 custom sharing groups that you can use, and they will be. You could create them as if you think about an education deployment, you could think about that being deploy a document, share a document to all teachers. It could be to all people within a department. So you get a range of target audiences you can create to share directly with. So it's a useful addition to than just sharing with individual users. You can now share to those target audiences and specify that in your domain administration.
Yeah, so that's going to be like a nice feature that obviously is set by the admins if you've got Education Standard or Education Plus. But for the sort of educators on the ground using this, when you go to the share option, it should make things a lot more streamlined. Coming to Education Fundamentals, so this will be rolling out later this year on the free edition, is draft responses in Google Forms. I as a math teacher who used a lot of forms, I know that I would have loved to have had this available, and you'll see that the progress in the form will automatically be saved as draft for 30 days or until the form is completed. So we know that learning doesn't happen necessarily in a snapshot, and that sometimes you'd like your students to go away and think about an answer before they put it in. Or maybe sort of review the learning, and now that opportunity is there. So great feature coming for Google Forms, which is the draft responses. Also, something that you hopefully are used to through docs, slides, sheets, is revision history, the ability to go back and look at the history of your Google document or your Google slides. And that obviously through docs is really useful for seeing the kind of the evolution of a piece of work. So that functionality is now, it's launched already, is available for Jamboard. So you can go and look at the edits that have been made to your collaborative Jamboard space and see who contributed what and when changes were made. So that's just bringing that in line with the features we all love from docs, slides, sheets, etc. Also, talking about docs is the ability to search to cite. So in your Google documents, if you go to insert citation, you'll now have, in addition to the Explore tool where you could cite footnotes, you can now build out a bibliography. So I'm just now thinking back to my master's when, oh my word, I could have done with this feature. And you'll be able to search for websites, journals, books, etc., and add those into a citation as you go. So a great feature, and that comes with the Education Fundamentals. So we'll be rolling out and have a look for that in your insert citations in a Google Doc.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of the general Google Workspace for Education launches. We're now going to have a look at Classroom. Just spotted a question. Will we not get any activity options in the basic education plans? You'll probably want to have a look a little bit more at some of the upcoming webinars where we look at the admin console in more depth. But there's lots of activity related features for tracking engagement available through Fundamentals. And obviously there are some more powerful ones available through Education Standard and Plus. Okay, so Google Classroom. Obviously many educators were using Google Classroom pre the arrival of COVID and the pandemic, but there's obviously been a rise in the use of Classroom to facilitate distance learning. So that's also led to a lot of updates coming to Google Classroom that won't just be useful for distance learning, but be really useful wherever you're using it. So Classroom audit logs, Charlie hinted at a moment ago in the admin console, those activity logs in BigQuery and those custom data templates and roster syncs are available for the education leaders and people in Charlie's position who are overseeing the use of Google Classroom on a fair old scale. For educators, we're going to talk about Classroom add-ons. So I mentioned third-party tools. We'll look into that in a little moment. There's also improvements around you as a teacher using Google Classroom on your phone or tablet. So that mobile grading process has been improved. There's going to be student engagement tracking, and you might have noticed already that you can now use rich text formatting when you're assigning in Google Classroom. And originality reports is localized into more and more languages. And there's a much more in-depth kind of baked-in compatibility with CS First. So if you are developing computer science, computational thinking with your students, then CS First is a free curriculum that can build those skills, and now it integrates even more seamlessly with Google Classroom. For the students, offline access to Google Classroom on mobile, that was obviously something highlighted over the last 12 months. And the team has obviously worked hard to make sure that they can improve that situation, and improved image capture and sharing for capturing that written work and getting it into Classroom really easily. Obviously, we're aware that parents have been grappling with the process of getting that work that's been carried out at home into that digital space. So going forward, that will be a lot easier as well for the students. Let's have a look in a bit more depth. So Charlie, over to you to talk about query.
Yeah, so this is really exciting because as administrators, we haven't previously been able to see that kind of deep dive into our classroom activity, and now what we're getting through the ability to export activity logs into BigQuery, we're getting that power to do that kind of deeper dive and to see really the activity and what's happening inside our Google Classrooms, and be able to look at that, and also importantly look at that over time as well, so we can see the shifts in usage day to day through different periods of operation. So it's really exciting, and it links through into BigQuery, and then from BigQuery, what you will be able to do is link that into Google Data Studio with Data Studio templates that are already created for you, and you'll be able to get the kind of displays that you're seeing there on the screen just now. So some really deep analytics into how Workspace and Google Classroom is being used in your establishment or in your organization. So really useful.
Yeah, I've had a little sneak peek of that in action, and I think it's going to be really impactful to kind of really get a sense of what's going on, and how maybe where Google Classroom is being used really effectively, and that can be kind of understood, and you can kind of share that best practice. So nice feature coming there. For the educators, there's going to be classroom add-ons. So you might be familiar with add-ons for various other Google products, but there's now going to be classroom add-ons. What that means in practice for anyone with the Teaching and Learning Upgrade or Education Plus is that when you go to assign in Google Classroom, you can have your Kahoot quizzes or your Nearpod presentations and slides right there to assign through Classroom. So you can bring together all of those somewhat disparate pieces of tools that you're using and bring them all together through Classroom. And obviously that's launching later in the year. So you'll start to see more about that coming through. While I mentioned add-ons, actually, I just spotted a question in the Q&A doc about how do we know whether add-ons are to be trusted? And I was just going to put it in the Q&A doc, but the Chromebook App Hub is a great place to go and search for apps that work really well with Chromebooks and Google for Education. And you can also tick the box to check their GDPR compliance. If they don't come up when you tick the box for GDPR, it doesn't mean they aren't. It just means that they haven't kind of shared that as clearly as it needs to be for it to be on there. So that's one way that you can check which add-ons, apps, extensions are kind of good and safe for you to use moving forward. But obviously, Charlie may talk about a bit more of this. Obviously, your own schools and organisations will have their processes for doing their due diligence on such and things like that.
Yeah. The add-ons look really great, Ben, I've got to say, because you're going to be able to keep that classroom and that learning activity in Google Classroom and then link out into those other apps as you need them. So it's a really neat feature.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what happens with that. And obviously, as providers like Kahoot and Nearpod are already on board, and there'll be more that will be keen to get their add-ons into that. And obviously, as an admin, you can decide which ones are available for teachers as well.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about activity monitoring, and is that only going to be in the paid editions? There's the ability to debug issues with Classroom through audit logs in the admin console in Education Fundamentals, Charlie.
Yeah, so this is a feature where you'll be able to go into the audit logs in Classroom, and just like you can just now, you can go into audit logs in Drive, and you can see activity. You'll be able to do the same thing inside audit logs in the admin console for Classroom. So you'll be able to see when students submitted assignments, when they joined particular courses, when they were removed from the course, and all that activity is now captured, and you can go and look at it, review it, and kind of debug what's happening. So if someone says, oh, I've lost an assignment, or this hasn't happened, then you can actually go through and look at the audit trail and discover those issues, and answer those questions when you receive them, which is a really great additional tool for administrators, because I know that that's one of the questions you do get asked in follow up. What's happening with this particular document in my classroom, or these students have been in my classroom but now they're not there, they've left the classroom. So it's kind of being able to debug that and get sight of it in a way that's really easy for the administrators to use, and then feedback to colleagues around what's happening. So another really useful add-on for administrators, a really good addition.
Awesome. Adding to that, also under Education Fundamentals, is student engagement tracking.
So this is a feature that's going to be within Classroom, Ben, so that your classroom teachers will be able to view and see the actual student interactions and engagement within the classroom. So it'll be added to the tabs across the top, and you'll be able to see that. And there you'll see the kind of recent activity. You'll see comments that have been placed, and submissions and such. So you'll be able to kind of see, same as you were as an administrator able to see the activity across your domain in Classroom, the class teachers will be able to see the activity within their individual classrooms as well.
So it's fair to say it's like an educator-friendly version of this bit, putting to Classroom and giving them that oversight.
Just giving you sight of all that data and all that information that's there, but making it really accessible to educators.
Cool. So just in case you didn't spot, the audit logs is already rolling out, and then you'll see the student engagement tracking coming to your classrooms later in the year. Yeah. Already mentioned it, but it's you feel like it should have been there a bit earlier. That it's rich text formatting in Google Classroom, so you can now embolden, italicize, and add bullets to your instructions, just making sure that students are very clear on the requirements and don't miss any kind of really useful information for doing their best piece of work. There are some that will start to roll out to other platforms, but at the moment you've got the web and iOS in terms of being able to see that, but you will see that roll out, and obviously that's freely available on Education Fundamentals. Now, also on Education Fundamentals, you can get originality reports. So if you're looking to enable this for your assignments, as a teacher, you can add it to 5 classes to allow them to, or 5 pieces of work to allow them to check their citation on particular key pieces of work. Lots of languages being added to that all the time, so that's now available in more, and will continue to expand. And obviously, to get unlimited originality reports, that is available in the Teaching and Learning upgrade. Okay, so we're just going to take a pause and see if there are any questions that we need to address. And we do have a feature request in terms of Google Slides and having a pen tool. One thing I might suggest on that is through Jamboard, particularly through the iOS or Android app version of Jamboard. You can bring in a set of Google Slides, and that gives you a great way to annotate over them. So before that comes as an integrated tool into Slides, adding your slides into a Jamboard might be a great way to do that. And that functionality exists through the Android or iOS Jamboard app, if that's relevant.
Yeah, we've got another question there, Ben, around the student engagement tracking, which I think, just to confirm, yep, that's right. That's going to be coming to Education Fundamentals. So that'll be available there, just to confirm that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it just needs, you weren't seeing things, there it is in green and white.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. John, I know it's not a question in the Q&A doc, but we'll try and have a look at that in due course about see if we can provide you with. So Charlie's obviously rolled out Google for Education across a local authority, and I've done similar in a few state secondaries. So we'll try and jump in and share any pearls of wisdom for that journey that you're on. I spotted another question. In Classroom, is there a straightforward way to close an assignment so that it is finished and learners can no longer edit or unsubmit, resubmit without deleting it? They stay open. Obviously, it kind of tracks whether they've submitted or not. And obviously, your point in time when you grade it. But there isn't necessarily I've now removed it. Any feedback in terms of Classroom, head to the question mark in the bottom left-hand corner of your Google Classroom and you can request feature and provide feedback, and the Google Classroom team read every single piece of feedback and then kind of aggregate the ones that most educators are asking for. That have pedagogical value, I should add. If you wanted a unicorn theme, it may not get prioritized. Okay. We've got a few more questions coming in. Some we might have to leave to the end.
Yeah.
So there's a question around lock elements in Jamboard as a feature request. We've got lots of feature requests. I'm going to get the team to pass this on to the product teams. Is there any talk of a built-in verbal feedback on assignments in Classroom? Michael, in terms of verbal feedback, there are some third-party tools that do that really effectively. So I don't want to necessarily call out one rather than others. But if you want to ask your question in the Q&A doc, I can put some links in to some verbal feedback tools that are available that integrate really well with Google Workspace for Education. So feel free to add that into the Q&A doc, and we'll make sure we give you a few ideas to take away. Okay, we'll try and pick up some other questions as we go towards the end. We've got another stop for questions. What we're going to have a look now is Google Meet. So there have been loads of updates to Google Meet, particularly over the last 12 months. It is almost unrecognizable from what it was at the start of those 12 months. So kudos to the Google Meet team for the hard work they've put in to update that. And most of that feedback and changes was educators asking for features that would allow them to sort of administer learning through Google Meet more effectively. What I'm going to do, though, rather than go through it slide by slide, on this particular one, I am going to switch us over to have a look at Google Meet itself. So I've just started by going to meet.google.com, and there's a few different ways that you can start creating your Google Meets. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an instant meet through this now, but don't forget.
Okay, but first you'll have to unlock your...
I'm glad that my Google Assistant agrees with what I'm doing. You can also obviously create them through Calendar. We will be having a look at Calendar shortly for creating breakout rooms and automatically adding people. And obviously you can create your Google Meet through your Google Classroom as well. But let's just start in Google Meet by creating an instant meet, and we'll jump in there. Okay, so here we are in Google Meet. You might notice that the interface has had a bit of an update, and that you'll start to see rolling out shortly. Hi everyone. I'll save you from seeing me too many times. Let's just mute that camera. So first of all, probably the bit that's worth pointing out is down in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got host controls. Really important for all educators to know where these are. And what you can do is you can remove quick access. That means that you've got more control over who is joining your Google Meet. And if you're doing this through Classroom, you can obviously make sure that people join in the right way. And there are some more features coming to ensure that the right people are in the Meet at the right time, and more features around co-teachers having host controls over a Google Meet created in Classroom as well. So you can remove quick access, and you also have the ability to decide whether those joining you can share their screens or whether they can send chat messages. So those are a couple of the features that you just need to be aware of. These here are what we call sticky settings. So if I turn quick access off now in this meet, when I go to my next meet, that will be replicated there. Now, in terms of updates, something that was added earlier was raising hands. So you can now see who's got their hand raised, and it will put them up in order. So if you are monitoring a sort of a conversation, you can see who's raised their hand, and if you feel that they've left it up for a bit too long, you can also lower that as well. So the raising hands, and what you'll start to see come in due course is, in addition to raise hands, will be some emoji reactions coming as well. So people can kind of share their instant reaction to what's going on. Captions. So captions has been available in Meet for a while, but initially they're available in English. Now, if I just switch that off and on again, you should now notice that there's lots of options for other languages too. Here we go. So in addition to English, you've got French, German, Portuguese, aimed at Brazil, and then Spanish for both Mexico and also for Spain as well. So those languages are available, and that might be useful if you're doing any kind of meetings, if you want to connect with other schools across the world, then hopefully those features will start to be useful. And as I mentioned before, later on this year, when you record a meet, as well as getting the recording and as well as getting a transcript of the chat, you will start to get a transcript of the captions as well, which would be really useful for those students who are accessing, who need those kind of additional accessibility support. So that's captions. Some of the other features that you need to know about, you've got the change layout. So just making sure that you have a bit more flexibility over your layout. Something I'll try and show, I'll do this towards the end of this section, because when you share screens through various different platforms, it can decide that it wants to only do it through one. But I'll show you, when you share your screen, some of the features that are available in Meet as well. If you are looking at the upgrade to the Teaching and Learning edition, then that comes with breakout rooms, polls, and Q&A. So if you remember, I turned off the ability to send chat messages. What I like to do is turn that off and enable the Q&A. And once you turn that on, this will pop up, this little announcement for everyone will pop up telling them that they can access that, and then people can ask questions. Do you use Meet every day? And if I post that, in addition to asking the question, there's the ability for people to upvote. So that there is quite useful, that ability for the rest of the class to upvote, or if you're in a professional development situation, to make sure that the most pertinent questions get answered. So that's a nice additional way of getting the feedback. Also polls. So you can start a poll. Do you like chocolate? I mean, I do, and that's not just because I grew up very close to the Cadbury's factory. Now, these don't have to be put out straight away. So as a teacher, you might want to sort of save this for later on in a process, or if you're doing professional development across your school, then you can decide when you want to launch it. And when you're ready, you can put that poll out, and you can start having people vote, and you can decide whether they see the results or not. And breakout rooms. So the ability to now, with a Meet, set up a number of different breakout rooms is available. We're going to look at this in a bit more detail in the next webinar, where we look at collaboration options. So I will spend a bit more time in this in the next webinar. And once you're ready, you can open up the rooms. It will push everyone out to those rooms. And when you're finished, the teacher can go along and join the different rooms and pop in. And then when you're finished, you can close them down. And it gives them a 30-second warning. But if you don't want to wait, you can just close them all down straight away. And everyone filters back into the main room.
Yeah, and Ben, it's good to point out that the features here that we're looking at are features that are available in the Teaching and Learning Upgrade and in the Education Plus editions.
Yes, absolutely right. So up until I started playing around with breakout rooms, Q&A and polls, we were in the fundamentals stuff. And yeah, that was the switch into Teaching and Learning and Education Plus.
Yeah.
Also, the recording option. So the ability to record your meets there, and it goes straight into your Google Drive. And if it was a calendar created meet, you'll have that available on the calendar entry as well. So those are most of the key features you want to be aware of. Freely available through Education Fundamentals is the ability to create a Jamboard, whiteboard space that is automatically made editable to everyone in your meet with you. So that allows a bit of a collaboration space there. Again, we'll look at that in a bit more detail in the next webinar. And the ability to change backgrounds is in there too. You may notice I don't have the ability to add my own, and that's a setting that can be adjusted based on different groups of users. So for example, you may not want students to add their own background, but you may decide to give teachers the ability to do that. Okay, so that's kind of a quick live tour of Google Meet. We'll spend a bit more time doing this and a few other things in the next webinar as well. Charlie, anything that I've missed before we switch back into the slides?
I think you covered that pretty well, Ben. I think that's everything that we chatted about covering. It's pretty comprehensive, and there's, as you said, lots of new features there that are great for teaching and learning.
Cool. In which case, then I'll just polish off with one additional feature, which is if I create a calendar event called Breakout, and Charlie, if I just invite you along. When you add one other person, you automatically get a meet in your calendar event. If you are using the Education Plus or Teaching and Learning Upgrade, then in addition to the host controls, which will be there for everybody, there's also this breakout rooms. And what it means is that you can pre-populate breakout rooms before you start the meet. So that's a nice ability. I can definitely see you maybe starting to use this with professional development. And also, if you want to add your class into a calendar event, you can feel more comfortable about that than previously because these host controls have now been added. So you can turn off quick access for this and add your class through calendar and provide sort of similar safeguards to adding them through Classroom. So that's the other option that's now available in relation to Meet through calendar.
Yeah, and we'll go on to talk about it a little bit, Ben. I think it's just the next thing we're going to look at, but administrators get some more controls around what we can do with Meet across your domain, so you can have a little bit more control over that.
I can see we've got some questions. Just going to flag, we will grab those questions around those Meet features, questions around recording, and make sure we try and cover all of those off before we finish up. So, as Charlie was mentioning, through Education Fundamentals, you do have some additional admin controls about who can join meetings. And this will also mean that like co-teachers can be hosts of meetings as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's just going to give you those controls so that when you're deciding how Meet will be set up for your users, you can decide whether you allow outside communication outside with Meet. You can have external speakers in. You can just really get to grips with how you want it set up, and also set up for different organizational units within your admin console. So you can set up in a variety of different ways and provide access to different groups within your establishment. So it's really, you'll have those additional tools, and you'll also have control over whether your users can join externally hosted meetings and such as well. So it just gives you the more control, all within the admin console, and all part of Education Fundamentals, so available to everybody.
Yeah, I think there's some eagerly awaited things. And Meet logs in the admin console, Charlie?
Yeah, so this is rolling out, and Meet Logs gives you the option, just as we looked at earlier with Classroom and making all that rich data available around how Classroom's being used. Same thing here with Meet. You'll be able to go in and look at the data around your Google Meets and how they're being used. It's great for identifying, meets perhaps that are visible in use that you maybe want to close down. You'll get kind of visibility just to ensure that everyone is using Meet in the way that you'd want them to be using it in a positive way within your establishment.
And that's available now. There's also going to be new Meet classroom integrations later this year. This is the one I kind of mentioned earlier, actually, is that students can't join a Meet call before teachers, and that co-teachers in a classroom have the host controls, whether they get in there first or not. And only teachers and students in the class can join by default. So those additional controls over having a clearly defined who can get in and who can't, that's obviously being rolled out later this year, and is something I know teachers will be keen to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are requests, things that have happened very much because of the feedback of teachers saying these are the controls that I want. We want to be able to start our meeting when I'm there, and we want our meeting to finish when we finish. And so these very much based on the feedback from educators.
Absolutely. Now, for a bit of an additional dive into Meet, there's, through Education Standard and Plus, there's the investigation tool. I quite like the investigation tool, Charlie.
Well, what we've got now is tools. We've always had tools within Workspace to allow us to investigate through vaults and look at incidents and look at that. So we've always had those tools. But now what we have is within the admin console, an investigation tool that brings in all of that rich data we spoke about Meet, but then allows you to search it and look through it and identify incidents or identify issues when, what happened and when, who was on a call to who at what time, when they connected. All of that rich data is there, allowing you to analyze what's happening within your environment, within Google Workspace, and be able to, someone says, was this particular user on a Google Meet at this time? Who else was involved in that? You can actually go in and look at those issues and deal with the security or the privacy issues related to that from that data.
Yeah, I think these additional kind of allowing you to go a bit deeper, these additional tools. I've already kind of mentioned it. The GIF on this particular slide gives you a slightly more in-depth way of setting it up, but that breakout rooms being setting up ahead of time in Google Calendar. So that's coming soon. You may have noticed that I have got it on mine, and you might see that rolling out if you've got the Teaching and Learning Upgrade or Education Plus. I'm just going to take the opportunity actually to pick up one of the questions. So if you have already got the legacy G Suite Enterprise for Education on a domain license, then that is the equivalent of Education Plus. So whenever you've basically got everything we've talked about, if you are already on the Enterprise for Education domain licenses. So you got the full lot. Okay, we have got one more section to go. Apologies for us running over a bit on the scheduled time. We're just a bit too excited about the updates.
Just chatting too much, Ben. That's what it is.
Yeah. So there's a load of Chromebook updates in terms of connectivity, making them work better with Meet and accessibility features. So let's dive in to some of the ones that you would want to see. So first of all, screen recorder. If you're using a Chromebook, there's now a native screen recorder available through the menu. You can pop that up and start to record, and you can select a section and all the kind of screen recording options you would expect. So that's now available through your Chromebooks. As long as your Chromebook is updating at the expected stage, then you should find that is now available on your Chromebooks.
That'll roll out to your Chromebook. I mean, this is a great feature. This next one is about switch access. So if you work with young people with additional physical needs, disabilities and such, who require that switch access, what we now have is the ability that switch access is built in to your Chromebook navigation. And that's a huge advantage now, that our young people will be able to use the same device as their peers, be able to interact with that, and use that switch access. So really excited to see that, and support for both types of switches, both the 1-button and the 2-button switch controls. So a great additional feature. And again, always improving the accessibility of Chromebook, which is really great to see.
Yeah, striving towards that point of parity for students, whatever their situation.
Absolutely.
So as you mentioned, live captions in different languages. Appreciate John's call out that there are obviously some other languages that would be very beneficial to add to that. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll see a number of new languages being added to that feature for the captions. And finally, zero-touch enrollment. So if you are purchasing Chromebooks, there is an option to basically have them arrive ready to go. Charlie, do you want to talk a little bit more about this?
So as someone who oversees the deployment of thousands of Chromebooks, this is a fantastic addition. So this is a true zero-touch enrollment. Through this, your Chromebook, when it arrives, the Chrome OS device arrives with you, and all you have to do is connect that to the internet, and it will enroll and be enterprise enrolled for you. So this is a kind of a new addition. It really is zero touch, and available through partners who supply your Chromebooks. So from an IT administration point, the actual physical process of enterprise enrollment, if you're an IT admin, you'll know that process, and you go through it, and it's a very slick process as it is. But however, the zero touch enrollment really does mean that you can just connect that device up to Wi-Fi. It will connect to your domain and enterprise enroll, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think for a lot of schools that can make a huge amount of difference. The workload of getting a load of Chromebooks in is quite phenomenal, and it won't be any more.
Yeah, just a really slick addition to, again, the features you got for Chromebook, and the kind of savings you can have from deploying Chromebooks at scale within your organization. Really, really great.
So both if you're interested in zero touch enrollment or the upgrade editions, then reach out to your existing partner if you have one. If you don't have an existing partner, then if you identify that on the feedback form, we can also point you towards some partners that can support you. And just in general, we'd really love to get your feedback. I will already acknowledge that timing needs to improve on these webinars, and we'll stick to the 45 minutes for the remainder of them. But any other feedback that you've got, we'd love to hear it. The link is in the comments, and also you can get the feedback link via the Q&A document if you've already got that open. And please fill that in and let us know. And that's a great way as well, if you want to sign up to hear more about the changes coming to Google for Education, you can do that through that feedback form as well. Okay, so I said we'd grab another couple of questions. So let's just see. I know there are a few back and forths about recording. Peter was asking about recording breakout rooms. So the recording does not record the breakout rooms. Partly that isn't a feature that has been rolled out yet. There would also be some issues around recording a meet that you're not in. So just have a look out for that one coming when solutions to that come. But currently, no, you can't record the breakout rooms. We've also got where's the other question I want to have a look to? There's people saying thank you. Rachel's question about zero touch enrollment, is there an extra payment? Obviously, kind of the service that your partners provide will have different price points, and that's something you'd kind of need to discuss with the partner you're using to get those Chromebooks as to whether they, what price structure they use for that.
Yeah, just reach out to your partner and ask them about that.
Charles, is the webinar being recorded? So we're streaming to YouTube. So the YouTube link that you joined with, you'll be able to go back and watch again. And equally pass that around as well to any colleagues that you think might benefit from it. So this will be available via the same YouTube link that you're watching it on for you to watch and whenever you like. Cool. So that's going to bring us to the end. Please feel free to access the Q&A doc if there's any outstanding questions or anything that comes up, and we'll endeavour to make sure that we answer all of those. This was the first of 6 webinars. Next week, we'll be looking at engaging collaborative activities in Google Workspace for education. Then we'll be looking at security features every admin needs to know, looking at some of the enhanced teaching and learning features in Google Classroom specifically, before then looking at device management, and then finally, Google Workspace beyond remote learning. We know many of you will have embarked on the Google for Education journey due to going very rapidly into a distance learning situation. But many schools around the world have been using Google for Education pre-pandemic and will continue to use it afterwards. So we'll just try and give you as much information as we can about how to continue using that effectively. So if you want to sign up for those, that bit.ly link there, bit.ly/workspace series. If you haven't signed up for all of them, you can pick the ones you want to sign up for now. Awesome. So as we said at the start, hopefully the features you've seen will kind of testify that we're looking for more choice control and flexibility. And without further ado, it just leaves us to say a massive thank you for your time. Really appreciate you giving up the time to sort of drop in, and we hope that you've got a few useful things that you can take away and use. Thanks very much. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Cool. Have a great evening, everyone.